Hello, my name is Paul Rogers. The app that I decided to do this semester is called Track My Stats. The idea came from I was talking to my high school volleyball coach one time. We met at the ASU game, and he was talking about app ideas with me, and it was right at the beginning of this when we first learned that we were going to have this project. And we both concluded at the end of our talking that it would be sweet to have an app that you could track your stats when we're playing volleyball. He has a lot of parents that come to their games, their tournaments, and they bring sheets on paper and have to track their stats for their kids on that. But the parents have told him that they would like an app that would be able to do that, and so I thought it would be a good idea. I didn't think it'd be too hard, and so that's what I did for my app. I think this is better because it removes the needs for papers. There's also usually a stat keeper that sits on the sideline with the players and keeps track of their stats. A mobile application would be better for this because you can have an arbitrary amount of players, but the paper, there's only a certain number of slots for it. And also this app would be able to keep track of seasons, whatever. So yeah. The way I designed my app was I split it up into two separate channels, if you will. First, when you first see the app, you're taking the main screen and you're given two buttons. When you can view your team and all the players on your team, or you can view your schedule for the season. So starting with the left diagram, this is if the case you hit the button to view your team. When you click that button, you are taken to the My Team View controller, which gives you a list of all the players on your team that you've added so far. If you haven't added any or you need to add another one, there's a button provided that you can add one, and that will add a new player model and a player entity to the core data. And when this view gets called, it gets all the records. You also can refresh the table, which will update the entities and the models if you have made any updates or changes or added any new ones. When you click on a player from that list, you are taken to another view which gives more in-depth detail about that specific player. There's a image of the player. There can be and the name of the player and the age of the player. At this view, you can update your player's information, update the picture, whatever it is. And both of these views are derived from a player model, which is basically an object that contains all of the data necessary for a given player. It contains all their stats information, it contains their names and their picture, and necessary function in there. You can set the picture of an entity. Going back to the beginning of the app, if you were to click on View My Schedule, you'd be given a table view, a list of all of the game models or all of the games in a particular season. It's very similar to the players. You'd be able to get, when you first click on the view, you see all of the records, all of the games for a season that you've added so far. You can add as many games as you want. And when you're adding it, you are prompted to enter the game number and the date of the game. And when you click on one of the games, you're taken to another view that shows, most importantly, a map of the location of the game. So when you're going through and filling out your season's information, as you go and put the address in for the facilities, the map will update for you and take you to the facility on the map. In a future release, maybe we can even include directions to that place from the map, but it's not in this one. Both of these, the schedule and the game, are derived from a game model. The header text shows on the table view. It shows the date of the game and also the game number, so you can keep track of how many games you have in a season, whatever it may be. And that is how I designed my application. Here's the MVC diagram. Starting with the controller, the main purpose of the controller in this application, of all the controllers, is to fetch various information for whatever it may be. If you're dealing with the stats, it fetches your stats information on a player. It fetches the games for the season, and also fetches all the players. It updates the table views if there is any updates, say to a name of a player, whatever it may be. It sends those signals to the view to update the information for the schedule and the stats, and so the view is consistent with the data in the core data. The view displays the team and player lists, the table of views, and allows the capability of clicking on them, allows the ability to click on multiple buttons, and to click on ways that you can add and update the stats. It also shows a map of the facilities and also pictures of the players. And this is important because the view listens for actions and sends those actions to the controller to be handled in their own way. The model is basically contains all of the data for this app. There's various players. There can be an arbitrary amount of players and there can be an arbitrary amount of games, and so every one of them has their own associated model, which has all data necessary for it. It handles all the core data for it. It saves it, updates the information from the controller if needed, and it also sends signals back to the controller with the updated information or new information if there is some. Some of the capabilities of my app, one, it includes being able to track your stats. Obviously, that's the main point of this app, but as you can see in this picture here, you're given separate categories of different stats: offense, defense, and serves. On offense, hits are just the total number of hits that you've attempted as a hitter. When the ball gets set to you and you hit it, that counts as trying to hit it, whether it goes in or out. A kill is if you've scored a point on your hit, whether it landed on the ground from your hit or it bounced off of a player. Each of those count. With those two stats alone, you can track your kill percentage, which is how effective you are at getting a point when you hit the ball. For defense, you can count your number of digs, which is just when the ball gets hit at you from the other team and you receive it and get the ball up in the air. That counts as a dig. For serving, every time you attempt to serve, you get a serve, and every time you serve it and the other team doesn't return it, you get an ace. This is necessary, but this view tracks the total number of stats for a given player. Another capability that my app has is you can show on a map where the facility of the game will take place. So as you are making a new facility, you get prompted, as you see on the screen, to enter address information, city, state, and zip code. And once you do that and hit the save button at the top, the map will update and take you to the address that you provided. So if you have games out of state for a tournament, whatever it may be, you'll always have a place to go to see where the app or where the game will take place. And this is unique per game you have on there, and so you have multiple different maps on different views for it. You also can change the date of the game and the game number if something happens where you have to have a rain check on any given game. Some limitations to the app. One of the main big ones that I realized after I was finished, stats are only tracked as the total for a player, rather than being game specific and having a place where the totals just are shown. It's important to track. Most of the people like having stats per game because it shows how effective you are against certain teams, and also if you had like maybe an off night, you can tell that. But with just having a place to add the total number of stats, you can't have all that information. Another thing that's pretty big limitation from the original spec. The data is saved to a device from the core data, so you can't share your schedule or your team with your teammates. Every player or their parents would have to log on to the app by themselves and input every player's name by themselves, rather than it being, say, in the cloud, which would provide a way for every device, if they log on to this, to have all the same team members and all the same schedule information, but that may come in a future release. Also, the player profiles was originally designed to have contact information, so you could share with your teammates. Say, for example, if someone needed a ride to a game or to a practice, you'd be able to log onto the app and call one of your teammates to get a ride or whatever it may be. Like I said earlier, team members have to be added by each user, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just not as good as it would have been. Some lessons I learned. I learned how to update entities in real time without having a save button. So on the stats page, every time you click the plus or minus to increment or decrement a stat, it saves the entity to the core data. Just retrieves the old entity and updates it and then saves it back. And the reason I implement it this way is because if you have a save button, sometimes you fill out a bunch of data in the app and then you hit the back button without saving it. And I have myself personally gotten frustrated when that happens. So with the real-time saving, when you increment or decrement a stat, you don't run into that problem. One thing that I did implement, which didn't learn in class, but I thought was cool, was the pull to refresh feature. You see on apps like Facebook or Google Chrome, when you pull down the screen at the top, it says pull to refresh, and it refreshes the data on the screen. And I implemented that with the players and the game lists. So if you make a change to it and you go back, instead of reloading the data every time, I'm only allowing the user to reload when you pull it down to save memory and time. Most importantly for myself, when I was communicating with my volleyball coach, given this idea, I was able to spec out an application that incorporates all the needs that he wanted. Obviously, some of them failed because of time constraints and other things, but it was a good learning opportunity for me to get all of his main points that he needed in an app and then break it down into what I understand and how to implement it with the core data and the map view and all those other things. And also, because we had to use MVC, I learned that how important it is to have this design feature in the apps, and I feel like I really solidified my concepts of MVC while making this app. Some suggestions I have, real quick. When we were learning about the core data, it would have been nice to have learned how to view each record in a SQL-like format, like a table, something that's not within Xcode or like that, but some way we can see the records. Because I remember in one of my labs that I was doing when we were first learning about core data, I accidentally saved a picture incorrectly to the core data, and my app wouldn't work anymore, and I was frustrated with it because the error code, I couldn't understand what it was trying to tell me. And so eventually, I found on Stack Overflow I just had to delete the app. And so once I deleted it, it worked. However, I lost all my other data that I had on there. So if we had this capability of viewing the records and deleting just that one, it would have saved me time. But also it would have taught me in the real world how you can view each individual record and just delete them one at a time. Personally, I would have enjoyed that, and it would help me with future projects I have in mind. Also, I know there's a lot of stuff to cover when developing an app, but I wish I would have learned more about how to style an app, how to make it look pretty, I guess, and how to make it look good enough that by the end of the semester we could put it on the App Store, I guess is a way to measure that. Just a way to format the buttons or include backgrounds, different styles of text, whatever it may be. And personally, I would have liked to spend more time on SpriteKit. That was one of the main reasons why I took this class, and from other people I talked to as well, that was the main reason that they took the class too. We only covered it within a week, and I just felt like it wasn't enough time that we could have spent on it. I mean, if we would have spent as much time on that as we did, say, the map kit or core data, it would have been very valuable to me. Those are some of the suggestions I have, and thank you so much for listening to my presentation.